the one thing is like I love Halloween. Christmas is not my favorite holiday, so I was just rooting for like Christmas to get all Halloweened out. So when he's like giving kids these like presents and they're like freaking out, I was loving that. Loved every bit of that. And so then I was like, wait, is really the lesson that like what's the happy ending is that Christmas gets to be Christmas again? Like, I'm not here for that.
Hey, you over there.
Yeah?
Guess what?
What?
You wanna talk spooky stuff?
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kay.
And I am Gabe.
You're a ghoul.
Sure am.
Wow, same.
What brings you here next to me?
I'm kinda over humanity.
Yeah, people are trash.
Just like our bodies.
You know there's a lot to say about how media is made.
Like there's a more to every story.
Exactly. It's fascinating. We could make a show.
A show?
And we'll let everybody know. Use our brains.
Brains.
No, not to eat. To educate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I guess you could say we're the ghouls next door.
Hi, I'm Kat, and
I'm Gabe, and we're
the ghouls next door. I need to express something that happened to me during our intro because I was gonna say that I was the combination of Jack and Sally, and then I was like, all right, Jally or Sack. I lost it. I was just laughing. Like, I can't say I'm Sack. I can't say that. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. And I'm the mayor. Jack. Where's Jack? Still the best quote in the whole movie. Jack, I'm only an elected official. I can't make decisions on my own. It's the best. So if you couldn't tell, if you're watching this, for what we're talking about today, we're going to be talking about Nightmare Before Christmas, which is a phenomenal musical of our childhood and youth for all you weirdos out there. It's going to be a very interesting conversation because our special guest today didn't watch it until we told him to for this episode. So it'll be like a fresh, hot take from someone who didn't get caught up in just like the merchandising and like people whose entire identities was just like Jack and Sally, like just socks. I think I had Jack and Sally socks probably and like backpacks. But our special guest today is super important to the Ghouls for a lot of reasons. One of the biggest being that every single one of the Ghouls shorts was made because of him, like with his amazing support and awesome eye behind the camera, and also scripts. He's written scripts for us and is always a great supporter and big fan. And so Roland, welcome.
Hey. This is exciting. First time on the Ghouls. Long-time listener, first-time caller here. You guys look amazing.
Thank you.
We like to be really extra. We try to hold back when we have guests because they don't like know us yet. But it's like hard. Like we do still show up. Like I did show up in a Phantom mask for Phantom of the Opera. Like, I was like, I'm not going to not do that if I have one. So we were like, Roland knows who we are. This isn't a surprise.
When I realized I didn't have a costume, I was thinking I could just hold my little friend Moscow up and just pretend that I'm a cat the whole time. But then he had other ideas.
Like, no.
I was out of here.
He thought about
I don't want to be a celebrity today. No. Well, welcome, Roland. We've been trying to get you on the show for a while. We're always just like, how can we fit you in?
Yeah, like, what do we talk about with Roland? He's doing so much stuff for us all the time. He's number one, the best school. He's on our website as if he is us.
He's one of the Ghouls. He's the reason we have those cool pictures.
Yeah.
And amazing videos. And Jolly Butcher that you definitely should watch if you haven't. And if you did, watch it again. Because you'll probably pick up on something.
50 times, please watch.
Yeah.
Definitely. I realize I'm doing a lot of nodding, but for the audio part of the podcast, that's not going to help anybody out there. They're not going to see all my great facial expressions.
Really
go watch the Jolly Butcher right now. Yeah. So you should. It's great.
Yeah. And it was fun to make.
Yeah.
Yeah, super
We always
fun.
make them in like a day or like 2-day film creators. But you make films all the time. You, like constant, like every time you have any moment of free, like not work, you're making film.
Yep. Yeah, it's sometimes I wonder why, but no, they're definitely a time-consuming endeavor. So it's definitely one of those ones you have to fit in any little bit of free time you have. Try to put it towards the passion projects. But yeah, I love filmmaking. I love any kind of like art that makes you feel something. That's kind of always my metric when I'm watching something, and that could even just be like little videos on Instagram or something. If they hit you in the feels like right away, I'm like, how did they do that? How did they get me to feel that? I think, film is just an awesome way to do that when you combine all the different pieces of it, the acting and the storytelling and mood and score and style and all those things.
Yeah.
So.
And you always go like 100%, like all in, no matter what it is. Like,
that's how you got to do it. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, this is it. This is the one. This is a Hollywood level production, and it's like a minute and a half, and it's about.
That's what I love about
inside
these
a
Ghouls
whale.
projects. Yeah, because usually they are short enough that we can, even though we do have just a day, we do go all in on production design and the effects and the graphics and all of it, so that we can just. Instead of trying to shoot 40 pages worth of stuff and then we have to rush from thing to thing, we can really just focus. I got Moscow to come back just for a second. He's just so cute. I wanted the world to know him, but he doesn't really want to be on camera, I don't think. But
baby.
But he's a master of knowing. He's ignored me all day long. I've been at home all day. He hasn't wanted to hang out with me. And then as soon as I get on camera, he knows it's time to come step on keyboards and things like that. He's just got a sixth sense, as all cats do.
Yeah.
When the perfect time to not.
Roland, you have Fresh Show Films. Can you tell our viewers what that's about so that they can watch your other films that aren't just Ghouls stuff?
Oh, yeah, sure. So several years ago, co-founded a very indie DIY filmmaking collective with my good friend Wyndham Maxwell, who have made quite a few of these video projects. And we really wanted to set it up in a way where we could keep it just as completely indie and guerrilla as all the little projects we've been doing all along, but have it be like a proper LLC and platform and where we could start making these. But to me, that's like my favorite part of the filmmaking process is when you are doing it at this really sort of indie low budget level, you get to do a little bit of everything. The farther up the chain you go, the more resources you get, but it's also becomes very siloed. You have your sound department, they only do sound. You have your cinematographer, they just worry about the visuals. So when you're kind of on these smaller level projects, everybody bumping my mic like that. Non-professional I am here. But it's live too. I was like, oh, they'll take all these, mic bumps and run on sentences out later. But no, it turns out we're live here. So, but yeah, I think I learned at some point, about myself. Always good when you can learn something about yourself. That was the part I loved the most, was just getting to do a little bit of everything and to be on a set where everybody else also feels like they can do that. So every project that we do for Fresh Show Films, even if it's a friend that we asked to come out to do a project that's out on a lake, which is a little nerve-wracking with all the gear, but so we're all in like kayaks and canoes. So we asked somebody to come be like the canoe person to move the canoe around. But the idea with Fresh Show Films is they are have just as much agency to weigh in on the project as everybody else. So we send them the script ahead of time. We ask them what they think. We really try to have everybody sort of getting in on the action because there's a lot of cool organic ideas and thoughts that come up from that. And there's also just, when you're on a Hollywood set, you have every role, because it's so siloed, you have, everybody's attention focused on exactly what it needs to be focused on. You have a script supervisor to make sure that nothing breaks with continuity. You have all these people so things don't fall through the cracks as much. But on a small production, you kind of need everybody to be looking out and being like, wait, weren't they doing this? Why are we doing this? Didn't they? Why were they? So by just kind of making that part of the fun of it, which is like we're all going to do what we can here to try to make something great. that's really the part that I just love. So yeah, so for Fresh Show Films, we've been doing that. We've made a handful of like our shorts that are, or like tried to make them like real proper movies where we pre-write a script and cast them and again try to make them for very, very small budgets, but do as much as we can to try to make them look like we had a bigger budget than we had. And then when the pandemic hit and we went into lockdown, I spent a while trying to make a short, like a 1 to 2 minute video.
Yes.
Every single week from lockdown, just pointing the camera at myself, just to have something to do, as we all kind of needed projects like that.
Yeah.
So I got 10 weeks in, 11 weeks in before I just completely burnt out.
Yeah.
So there's a playlist on there too that and in some ways that's kind of like gained Fresh Show Films a little traction in a different way, because the shorts we make, like, we have a goal to make 3 to 4 a year, but that is kind of ambitious just because it takes quite a bit of prep. So yeah, you can check those out, and then end up doing quite a few music videos as kind of the other piece of the puzzle for me. So, which I also love because it's just a whole different kind of storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think it fits that kind of everybody's ideas are welcome model even more so, just because it can be so abstract in a lot of ways. So you can do these projects and be like, well, what if you're doing this? What if we're doing this? How about we make it look like this? And then you can alter so much in the edit that on set you can just be like, yeah, let's get every possible thing we can. Let's get every idea, and then we'll kind of figure out how to fit it together.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I love watching music videos too. With that in mind, I just have been, like some of my favorite content, some of my favorite things that have made me feel things are music videos, getting me up in my feelings. So
they're just so cool. They're not like bound by scripts, which is like why we really enjoyed last week with Melanie Martinez's K through 12, because it's just like it's music video and it's just like a legit film. That's why I'm so excited to watch Halsey's film as well. Eventually, I'm gonna get around to it. And you did. You could see Kat in one of your music videos for Jacqueline Constance.
That's true. I did do
good. That was a good one.
See some incredible artwork right on Kat's arm in that music video. That was super fun.
And now it's on my face.
Yeah, same location as Jolly Butcher, because we like to use our resources. If it's there, we're going to use it. But I realized that I don't know if Kat is, but do you consider yourself a horror fan, Roland?
Before I met the two of you, I wouldn't have identified myself that way. I think what I used to tell people is that in that same vein of like, I want to be emotionally manipulated, like fear is right up there for me as one of the ones that does it for me. 'Cause it is so like a good, like scary, film. So I would put like, I love a good cry. So I love like tugging the heartstrings is maybe number one for me. Then maybe then fear, and then maybe like comedy and stuff like that. So, but I wouldn't have called myself like inherently a horror fan. And that's probably backed up in just like, I don't have the canon, like I haven't seen enough like horror films to really like call myself a true like, but I that is an experience that I love, to just like sit down and just like be completely terrified. I really enjoy that. And so that like, and when it's done well, even if it is like super campy, if it's really, then I think it's a great way to have your emotions manipulated in that way. Mm-hmm. It's a feeling that you can't, because obviously, like, you don't actually want a real killer stalking you. To like, some people might. That might be your thing, but like that, yeah. But it's versus like things in my real life make me cry all the time, or make me laugh. Yeah. So it is it's a different kind of one that you get to kind of like live through that. And it's such a like, I think certainly, just listening to the podcast now for like 3 years, it's made me appreciate more. But horror is such a genre that's tied to like exploring societal issues and really sort of like and can do it in a way that that a lot of other genres can't, because they would just be preachy or obnoxious, or it's got this great, it's a great vehicle for that in some ways. So
it's really like accessible. Like anybody can make a horror movie. Like it's not like not everyone can make a good one, but really like you can. Like thinking of like Halloween, like there's like no blood, right? Like it's all just like a dude standing a little far away. Yeah. and for that to be like a monumental like film for people, like very like small budget, just like trying to get a little tension, in there, and that's enough. And I think like that versus like when you have a drama or you have a comedy, like especially comedy, like that's hard to write for. Like it's hard to like, cater to what people might find enthusing in just any time of life. Like comedy changes so often, but like I feel like horror, like we all have those same emotions, and they're pretty easy to achieve. You just put people in scary positions, or you can use it to tell other things. And because it's not like so in the open for everyone, you get away with a lot more. You could say a lot more and do a lot more, because it's not like, it's not quite as scrutinized as any other genre that's out there.
Yeah, because it's ones that arguably audiences aren't getting it onto unless they're already horror fans. Like people don't, if you don't like horror, you don't, you probably aren't going to the movie when it's out. So it's able to like kind of sit for a minute before people are like, I'm mad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's interesting when I feel like there was a period when I was like a teenager with like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff, where I feel like there was like kind of like the summer blockbuster equivalent of horror, and it felt like it had mainstreamed. I'm trying to think what else is in that. Maybe Hills Have Eyes, and I don't know. There's just like a bunch of so a little less niche-y and a little less where you'd be like, oh, I don't do horror. Like it'd be more like, okay, we're going to the theater, and that's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the movie to see this weekend. So like we're seeing it.
Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street or something. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting when it does intersect kind of with just sort of the more, but
yeah, because there's like waves of that too. Like they give like the 90s and like Scream and all of that. Like those were films that they were acknowledging the impact that horror was having, like the moments that horror was having, and then like the early 2000s, which was just a mess. And I think it's funny that like you said that you wouldn't have considered yourself or wouldn't have labeled yourself as a horror fan, because like I have always, like, most of my life I've liked horror, like loved horror even, but even still like didn't realize how much of my identity was tied to horror until we made this show. And then I was like, because we were just like, what do we like? What can we talk about? Oh, we both like horror. That's something we could chat about and like work into both of our fields. And then like, as we're like, if we're interviewed or we're talking about things, I'm like, oh man, I remember how like, I had like this nickname growing up, or I remember like having these films on DVD instead of like anything else, or like what did I dress up as for Halloween in like 97 or whatever. It was like, I was Ghostface. Like I think I was a horror fan for my whole life. And it's funny until someone like really asks, and then you're like, oh wait, yeah. And I also think it's like, because I don't think, I mean, there are still, like, gatekeepers, obviously. Like, there are plenty of people who are really mad that I hadn't seen Halloween until yesterday. And, having a whole horror podcast, people being like, you never saw that? It's like, I get it. But, like, there's a lot of films out there, and I'm not that old. I miss that. I miss that time when that would have been significant for me. Or, like, I watched Sixth Sense for the first time on our show, so that was already spoiled for me. I was like, this is not an ending that is going to be surprising at all. But I can still, like, appreciate what it was like for people seeing it for the first time. So I think people need to lay off. Let people enjoy things. Cool. Kat, do you have a question?
Putting
you on the spot.
Okay, no, I do. What is your favorite horror movie that you've seen recently? / also, which is your favorite short film that you've done with us?
Oh, 2-part question. Favorite short film first. So I guess I do love the little like ones I made during quarantine just because I stopped worrying about trying to be such a perfectionist and stuff. I wouldn't say they were my favorite to make just because it's not as fun to like sit at home alone with a camera and have it just be you then like on set and doing all this cool stuff. But those are kind of, because they're pretty short. Those are, often the ones I just sort of point people to if I'm like, yeah, you want to see, and then it's a little narcissistic pointing people to videos where they see even more of my dumb face, but
they're so relatable. It was like we were all in that same feels during early pandemic time.
Yeah, it was definitely like it was a instead of sort of like what can I make that's just I was trying to think of like what are the stories that haven't been told, what are the how do we go about this in a whole new way. It was much more focused on like just taking something relatable and then kind of running with it instead and having it be something that like everybody is experiencing. So that was a lot of fun. Let's see. So horror movie. So we actually watched it together. We watched Parasite together. It feels like a cop out because it's another one that just like blew up in the zeitgeist, but I just recently rewatched it. And there's just so like it has so much replay value. Like there's so much to it that you can get on like with the symbolism of it, like the it's got so many layers to it. It's great. And it's scary. Like it's not like the scariest film you've ever seen. Yeah. But it builds tension. And it's almost like a little gross. Like it just feels like being in these rich people's world. You know that something like really kind of like unsettling is happening early on, and it starts to like chip away at you. It's really like kind of leaves its mark in a different way than like a traditional horror film. So
super stressful. Do you know how?
Yeah. And has just some of the best like standalone scenes, like the scene where they're all hiding under the table. And they
have that conversation about the subway.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's just like you're just not going to find anything like that in any other film. Yeah. Like it's such an incredible experience in some ways, but and it actually got like recognized for it.
Yeah. There's so much money. You have a table just in your living room that can fit an entire family under it. And
that's wealth.
There's definitely
If your family can fit under your coffee table, you're living.
Yeah, you might. There's a lot of like just artistic direction with that film. It's profound. I agree that it has replay value because you like you watch it and you're just like dumbfounded. Like you don't know how to feel or what to do with yourself. So then you like watch it again to be like, okay, I know where we're gonna go. And then you're still like,
there's things I miss. Yeah.
And then you like read about it or you like watch an interview or something, and then you go back and you're like, I'm still lost. I'm still stuck in like these emotions. I don't know how to like a glass case of emotion that you're in. That's a good one to have watched recently. And if October wasn't so full of everything that ever could be, I would watch films. I would have a good time.
There's so many that are on the list of things we have to watch. That came out like this month, and we're like, that's rude. Honestly, I feel like you should not do this to the horror community in their busiest season. But also it's like good because then you're catering to it. But it's just like, I can't. There's not enough days or hours to watch all of it. And I'm going to do that in November, and it's going to be great. And that's why I don't read Twitter anymore. because I don't want to be spoiled.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to know about antlers. Don't tell me. But it's also like, I feel like I want, because all year we're spooky, right? Like all year we're doing horror. So everyone else should also be doing that. Like, I don't want to, like, stop putting it all in 1 month. I can't do it. I can't watch every single thing in just October. That's not going to work.
Yeah, it's our busiest time.
You to have Halloween all year. The Halloween channel all year. The Peacockoween or whatever they called it, which was ridiculous, all year round. All of it. Like Shudder is
That's
already
kind of what
putting
Shudder's...
in all that work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're so amazing. And Netflix too. Like Netflix actually consistently like doesn't just hold off. Like
they put out horror stuff throughout the year.
They're just out. It's just out. It just like maybe they'll put it in their spotlight a little more in October, but they really are just like, yeah, whenever. And I'm like, thank you. It's so hard. I want to apologize, Roland, that I am being very attentive. And usually I have a great listener interviewer face, but my eyebrows aren't real. Because for the first time, I like cosplayed them where they're like glued down and there's stuff. So these are like not my. So like I'm doing things with my face.
You just can't tell.
You can't see, and this is why people are afraid of clowns. It's because they're not authentic with their faces, and so I'm like trying to like overact now because I'm just like I am engaged. Oh yes, I can't. My face is
actively operate like there's not a thought behind my eyes. So I am listening 100%. It just doesn't. It's just like
I'm just always like like I'm always very attentive. Kat is always like, what a great interview face.
Yeah.
You make the person feel like they're being heard, and I'm trying very hard.
And I'm bad at it. So I
appreciate that. Okay. Yep.
Right. We love
my
you.
My face has both happiness and sad. So maybe it'll just like, depending on what you're saying, I'll just be like, that's good. I like that. Or, oh.
Those are kind of like sad puppy dog eyebrows in some ways. Like the way they're like tilted up a little at all times. It's kind of, it's just like.
Yeah, it's definitely like a pout face.
I haven't seen my face from this angle. It's really good.
It really does look amazing. How long did it take to do all the makeup for that?
So I did it like in the middle of the day because I didn't have any like meetings. So I was like doing it while I was like typing up things. I was like doing it. And like Mike came in, it was like 3:30 and he was like, that's for the show at 7. I was like, yeah, why? He's like, for 7 p.m. tonight?
Yep.
Okay, all right, I'm making Beyond Burgers. I'll see you down there.
Same.
This has been this
dedication.
Kat started it, and then
I started at like 1 or 2 for no reason.
It didn't take too long.
What's the hardest makeup you've ever had to do for a show? Like the most involved?
This.
Is it really?
What about so when you were the blue alien from Earth?
Okay, fair. That took a while, but that did not take as long as it. I started this at 1 o'clock today, maybe 2.
Whoa.
And then I stopped doing it at like 5, and then I touched it up right before we started.
Even more than like when you were Chris.
Yeah, no, those were all very
Evans
quick. I actually like had to look at stuff while I did this.
Mr. Bedevil.
Yeah, no, those were all like fairly quick. It took like an hour. This took the day.
This is a dual costume, so you had to like
I also did body paint.
References for both. Whoa,
which I don't usually do. So I think that's part of why it took so long. Like the face, I was done that by like 3 something. I don't know why. I just like woke up and I was like, that's what's happening today. You know, it's like the time that I did become an alien. I was like, no one asked for this, but this is what I'm doing. I'm doing it.
It was great.
Dedicating.
It was great. And it, like, I would say, I think to this day, my favorite was from before we did visual content. We would still dress up. Like, we've been dressed up since day 1 because we would take pictures instead of making, like, artwork for each episode like I do now. So we would, like, dress up. And there was one time Kat was dressed as Edgar Allan Poe, and I was a raven. And she looked so sad as Edgar, and she, like, couldn't keep a straight face.
I couldn't stop laughing.
We took a picture, she was just, like, sad. Why don't we switch over to Nightmare on Elm Street to talk about this super fun film.
Nightmare Before Christmas, even.
That's what did I say?
You said Nightmare on Elm
Street.
Nightmare Before Christmas. I have been saying that
all the nightmares.
We're live, folks.
You get it. You get it fresh.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Nightmare Before Christmas I almost changed like our whole. So for people who also were living under the same rock that Roland was, I'll tell you what Nightmare Before Christmas is about. Jack Skellington, king of Halloween Town, discovers Christmastown, but his attempts to bring Christmas to his home causes confusion. And he does more than that. He just straight up steals this entire culture. He wanders in. He has a midlife crisis. He wants something else, and he steals it. So, growing up, this was a super fun film. Like I said, I remember it was many people's identities for a long time. Tim Burton just really was. Like, people really... Like, I loved Beetlejuice, and... It's kind of... I kind of liked Edward Scissorhands. I just really like Johnny Depp. I think Johnny Depp's a pleasure. And Winona, obviously. She's a saint. So just seeing them was great. But I was never just like, I gotta go see the new Tim Burton. But I also totally understand people loving him and like how he is kind of like this representation of like the weirdo or the outcast or the other during a time when, you know, things are full of like puppies and rainbows. In the movies that made us, they had like a clip from when Tim Burton was working at Disney as like one of their junior animators. Like he was like really young. So they're doing this like tour video and they come and they're like, "Hi, Tim," and he's just like staring at them like dead face.
Doesn't
like,
say
what?
anything. Just like.
And I was like, yeah. And then it's just like a montage of like the cast and crew just being like, he was odd.
Yeah.
He was strange. And I was like, yeah, I get it. And I think like from watching that and like doing this like dig into him, and next week we're going to have Sweeney Todd. So we're like really kind of covering a bit of him. And I feel similarly to him as I do about H.P. Lovecraft. And that his work and the impact he's had on the horror community means way more to me than him as a person. Like, I just, like, it's one of those things where people are often like, can you separate the art from the artist? And in this point, I'm just like, I have to. The same thing with Lovecraft. Like, I'm like, I kind of have to, because there's no redeeming that, like, him at all. So I'm just like, horrible. Okay. But he has had this really big impact on just, like, horror in general. And the same thing with Tim. Like, we ain't friends, but his work is really, like, impactful. And I think made a lot of people feel heard. But I think also it kind of validates certain aspects or, like, ways of thinking and empowers certain people and makes other people outcasts instead.
Yeah. 100%. I think I liked it when I was little. I don't have a memory, so I feel like I watched it. I definitely have watched it. I feel like it's something they put on like near Christmas time, like when I was little. But I didn't remember it much at all. Like when I was watching it for this, I was like, huh. Yeah, I've seen it before. But like I did not remember it to the point that like I feel like when I was younger I would have had to have been into Nightmare Before Christmas. But I know a lot of people I was friends with and knew loved it. And I was kind of like, that's cool. It's gothic. I like goth stuff. Nice. But I was never like, this movie. I must love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I do think I had it like on VHS.
Yeah, I feel like I had to have.
I think I had merchandise. And I remember a lot of people owning things. I didn't really watch Corpse Bride until it was like too late.
I do remember that one too.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's fun. I thought it was fun. I loved seeing like the different horror things in there, all the different creatures and characters. And I, even though we'll talk about some of the problems, I did enjoy Oogie Boogie. I thought he was fun as a villain. With media analysis glasses, might rethink things. But I think it was cute, and I thought Jack Skellington was cool. I never really cared for Sally. I thought she was kind of boring. But I also get, like, she's a supporter, She lifts up the dude. And he's already the king. Maybe he doesn't need that, but...
I did enjoy that the person who, like, kept her captive, she just, like, actively poisoned him.
Yeah.
Like, she knew poison.
And she's like, So
And that was dope for me. I was just
Thanks,
like, good,
bye.
as you should, man.
She
Poison
does
that
some
man.
clever stuff too. I loved all her like the stuff with her removable arms and her, like, jumping out the balcony and like.
yeah.
So I think as much
Sewing
as
herself back
she's
up.
like blandly written in some ways, maybe intentionally blandly written, like she does a bunch of cool stuff that kind of like, yeah. I mean, there's so much detail in all the like. I think at least for me on first watch, that's definitely my favorite part of just all the little like details to the Gothic world when they're like, you know, the trophy they hand out to the vampires and just every background is full of things that you can find. There's and it's not just all like sort of like the I don't know, the least original version of something. Like there's some very unique, like strange stuff going on. It's not the most stereotypical Halloween-y stuff. There's like a lot of like very, you know, detailed, weird Gothic vibes. Kind of at every turn.
Yeah, in the episode, so Caroline, so here's the trouble, is that story and characters, it's roughly based off of Tim Burton. So his name's at the top, but it really doesn't he's did nothing besides come around, look at it and be like, good job. And then he would leave. He was busy doing Batman, or he was kicking walls.
He was
kicking walls or shouting at people.
Yeah.
Screaming, you know, being very professional, throwing his little temper tantrums. Another H.P. Lovecraft. And so he was busy with Batman. And so it's really the amazing team, and it's really sad that they don't get the recognition. So it's really Henry Selick who directed this film, and it's because it's claymation, it's stop animation.
Which is
and
hard.
It's
It's a lot of
very
work.
hard and time consuming. It was like over 2 years of them working on this film that they didn't even have a script for the majority of the time, and then like working on it. And he went on to make some of my favorite films that were claymation, which is Coraline and James and the Giant Peach.
James and the Giant Peach was
like,
great. I do remember that.
Yeah, such an amazing
I
film.
loved that movie.
I would read James and the Giant Peach to my younger sister every night before bed. So like that was like our thing. And so like watching it was like this big treat too. So I was like, oh my God, it was him. Like this whole time I, you know, grew up as like Tim Burton's Nightmare. And for it was kind of like, whoa. Like it was so rude to see like that he really didn't have anything to do, and that anytime he did interact with them, it wasn't very positive or like a good experience. But the Sally character, so he originally asked Michael McDowell to write the adaptation for it, who had worked on Beetlejuice. And so like he had that kind of connection, but McDowell was having some issues
Problems, yes.
with the nose candy and such. And so they were like, you gotta go. And essentially, up until this point, they didn't have a script. What they had was Danny Elfman's songs. And Danny Elfman was before this, or like before really working with Tim Burton, was just a singer in a band. Like, I mean, not just, like he was a big deal.
Yeah, like
but he
really
hadn't
liked
done like
music scores.
Like, yeah, music scores. And he didn't even want to do it. And then he did. And so he kind of got the concept and the gist from Tim, and Henry, what the story is supposed to be. So he wrote the songs, and then they just like had to build an entire script around his songs. And so the person who worked on Edward Scissorhands and happened to be at the time, I don't know if they still were now, dating Danny Elfman, was Caroline Thompson. And so she was like, I know those songs because I hear them every single day. Like
I can write
a
a script.
I can do this. Like, I already wrote for you. I'm very familiar with the work. And so the original concept for Sally was like, honestly, like this femme fatale, kind of large-breasted. Yeah. Like she was like really just a filler character and nothing. And so Caroline was like, no, like we need to flesh out this person. Like she's going to contribute and she's going to help and support. And like, it really came through. And for the creators too, they were all going through different things. And for Danny Elfman, he was saying like, the songs were really a representation of where he was at, like mentally at that time. And it was kind of like, that's why it kind of sounds like he's in a midlife crisis in the song because he's just like, everybody loves me, but I'm miserable and something's not right. I need a change of pace. And it's because he had, been in this band and he was beloved by all his fans, but like that just wasn't doing it for him anymore. So he had like this switch. So like that whole, like, it's really not anything to do with Tim Burton. It's like as if I was like, hey, Roland, here's one sentence, like I often do. I'm like, here's a one sentence pitch for a film. And then you're like, okay, yeah, go write it. And I'm like, what? But instead of that, if I was like, here's my one sentence, go make it now. Like you make
and then
it,
make sure you call it and then put my name on it. Yeah, exactly.
Kate Castro's, whatever this is. And I just kind of showed up sometimes.
Yeah. Ultimately, it seems like that was Disney's fault for real. Because they're like, oh, he's popular. That's cool. We're going to put his name all over it. I don't care about the guy who actually made it. It's like, people know who Tim Burton is, though. So we're just going to.
Yeah. They don't know. So, like, yeah.
Yeah.
And it, like, they had so many issues, but I thought something that was really interesting was that the first scene that they did was What's This? The Christmastown song, because it was for Disney. So they were like, we need to cater to the Disney execs, and they might not be keen on like the kid that's eyes are sewn shut or like like Oogie Boogie or any of these like scary spooky dudes. And so they made Christmastown and like how Dr. Seuss it looks and like it's very Disney, and the execs were like, yeah, this is great, yeah, here's some money,
100%.
take it. And then they were like, all right, now we're gonna make, like, let's not even talk about how the song says that none of them are throwing heads and absolutely no one's dead. The lyrics, so fun.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable that I hadn't remembered until I watched it, like looking up where to stream it, and then I'm like, oh, of course, it's a Disney movie, like it's on Disney Plus, like, but yeah, it's very, I mean, out of the mold for like what a Disney movie and especially like a Disney movie of that era would be. So it's like, it's kind of amazing to me that they like, like released it when they did, but. We were talking about before we went on about how it's got a massive cult following now, but it wasn't crazy popular when it came out. Mm-hmm. I have to assume partially maybe that's just because Disney didn't really market it. Like a lot of these like cult films, like Austin Powers had no marketing budget, so it like wasn't a huge hit when it came out. But then it got this like massive cult following, and by the time the second movie came around, they had enough money to pay for marketing. But it makes me wonder if Disney, after they saw the final thing, were like, okay, well, we paid for it. We're putting it out. We're not going to just like eat the loss on it, but we're not paying for like TV ads and stuff to like hype this thing up. Like, and it's
wild too, because they make so much money off of it now. Like they sell so much merchandise, which they do with all their films, I guess. But like for them to just sit on it and like be like, and then now like it is one of their very large profits is rude. Yeah. but ironic and kind of funny.
Well, it like flopped. So it flopped when it first came out. It was like 90.
Because they marketed it to teenagers, right? Like, wasn't that
they
the
marketed
whole thing?
it to teenagers because kids didn't like it. It was 93, so they marketed it very little, and it just didn't do well, and it kind of flopped. And then years later, like some of the creators were like in Japan or something, and they saw the merchandise, and they were like, "Wait a second." People like this, and then they were like, oh, we can sell toys, and that's how it like changed, and that's when they threw on Tim Burton's name because he was a selling point, and they really leaned into like, this is an aesthetic that people really dig and is like, it's digestible for like younger audiences, which I think is why it was, because it really came back with like Blockbuster, because people would go and rent it, and it was like it's a cozy home kind of film. Like I wouldn't say it's very much like a theater film, and so
that's true.
It like kids just were excited about it, like, and it is, I think it's super fun, and like you're saying, it's so different from what we're usually getting with Disney specifically. So there's like this entire group of like young people who just aren't being represented and took a long time before even more people were represented, and then even then not always great. Disney. But as someone who way past its like excitement time era watching it, what was your first thoughts, Roland? Like, how did you feel?
So I watched it the first time and I didn't really get it. I even texted you and I was like, wait, what's the thing? But when I started looking into it, I was like, all right, I should probably watch it again. So I actually watched it a second time just to see. And so I was trying to put my finger on what like didn't work for me the first time I watched it. I think that the one thing is like, I love Halloween. Christmas is not my favorite holiday. So I was just rooting for like Christmas to get all Halloweened out. So when he's like giving kids these like presents and they're like freaking out, I was loving that. Loved every bit of that. And so then I was like, wait, is really the lesson that like what's the happy ending is that Christmas gets to be Christmas again? Like, I'm not here for that. But it is kind of like, it's a funny, like, almost like an allegory for like cultural appropriation in some ways, right? Like it's, cause it's, yeah, he just like swoops into their town and is like, well, look at this jolly happy guy. He seems to be doing what, like what I want to, that's how I want to feel. I'm just going to like quite literally like kidnap him and take his place and give myself all these feelings and accolades and stuff like that.
What it really is. Like,
right. Yeah. Without asking a single person there about any of it or anything.
Yeah.
Like doing it
making
respectfully.
it your entire personality all of a sudden. Like,
So it definitely like on a rewatch appreciated that a little more. Danny Elfman's singing did not do it for me. And the actor who plays Jack didn't do it for me. And I just like it, the whole first watch, I was like, did they like just leave Danny Elfman's, like, are these like Danny Elfman's like dub vocals that are like demo vocals that he did and they were supposed to like get a real person to sing these but I think like, which, like really took me out of it on the first watch. I just, every time a song came up, like, so just not having had any of that nostalgia to connect me to it at all, like watching it as like, I had a really hard time getting past that. But I think in hindsight, like it's, in that idea of like it being like an Disney movie in some ways, it is kind of nice that it's not just like, the classic like Aladdin thing where then they've cast somebody with like a Broadway trained voice and you're just, carted away on these beautiful things. But just the fact that Danny Elfman doesn't sound anything like the actor who plays Jack. And then the singing also to me just isn't, it's not even that the singing would have to be good for Jack. Like it could be kind of goofy offbeat, but it somehow just didn't have the energy or the vibe that I thought. So that got all up in my head on a first watch. And the second time I like let it go and the songs are great. Like there's a lot of like amazing stuff going on with just like the numbers they do. And I had actually, even before I saw it, I had seen a lot of, somehow I managed to never watch the film, but watch a bunch of behind the scenes on it. Cause it was so like revolutionary in some ways. They really, like the way they did the stop motion and stuff was totally game changing.
Yeah. Super. All the heads of Jack.
Yeah, right. They did. So instead of twisting mouths up and making eyebrows and things, they plotted out on a like super early 90s computer all the facial animations, and then they made what was that, 170 or something heads for Jack. Yeah. And then they had the computer tell them like which number of head to go to based on like what they wanted for that facial animation, which is why his face is so expressive, which really adds a lot to it. That it's like for a skeleton, you could do a whole stop motion animation with a skeleton and just have the skeleton's head there with almost nothing going on with it. Yeah. But I think by having this extremely emotive face, it does help a lot. Mm-hmm. But and then, you like once I read some of the stuff from Carolyn Thompson about how she got brought in to basically try to write a script from a bunch of songs, I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. Cause I just kept feeling like this feels like an outline of a movie, not a movie. This feels like the way this is written just feels like somebody trying to get from song to song. And it turns out that's exactly what it was. So I think
like mostly songs.
Yeah. Which like to her credit, she like doesn't really get in the way of the songs, at least. Like she does about as good a job as you could do to just like, if they were already filming the movie with the songs and had no script and needed a script, and I did appreciate like for Sally's character that she's the one that does like the courting of Jack in some ways. So there's a little bit of role reversal there where, but yeah, they don't really do that much with her character. And Jack is so self-involved that it's kind of a, there's no real like, yeah, there's no real like ending where he realizes his mistake with like Christmastown, but doesn't realize his mistake with just having like waltzed through a world where everybody loves him and he doesn't do anything for any of them and doesn't.
To earn it.
Yeah.
It's just
Thinking.
Yeah. And I think that's like just indicative of that experience too, like, and who they're trying to cater to for sure. And I mean with like Danny Elfman wrote it and then got really attached to the character, so he like begged him to let him do it, and then he couldn't really act, so they made Caroline, his girlfriend, tell him that he can't act in it and that they're gonna have to replace him and keep his vocals, which was really sad because like, Tim, just tell him.
Like you're his friend, you should be able to tell him.
And that was like one of the problems on set. There was some bickering between Caroline and Henry because he had like some thoughts of what he wanted in the script, and she was like, you're not like bugging Danny about his work, like, but you want to change words in my script. Like there was a lot of like infighting in that, and then so many, like Caroline and Henry both had different ideas for the ending from what the ending is, and this is like the notorious scene where so what really happens in the film at the end is Oogie Boogie is revealed to be like made of bugs, and he gets unraveled, and then his bugs fall into the vat. Well, Henry wanted this scene where when he gets unraveled, it turns out that it's Dr. Frankenstein or whatever who's manipulating him behind the scenes the whole time, which I think would have been pretty problematic for like the only black character because it's like voiced by a black actor, very obviously like New Orleans inspired, to make him controlled by a little white man, like German. Like I don't think so. So they had like this whole thing, but Tim was very upset, and it's like this notorious story of him kicking a hole in the wall, like his steel-toed boots just straight through the wall, and then just left. And then the crew just had like a sticky note on the wall that was just like, Tim kicked this, and just like left it. And so, but Caroline also had a pitch for the ending. She didn't explain it in there what it was, but Tim just like screamed at her, like just super unprofessional, screamed at her. And so that didn't happen either. There was some complaints from crew people about Oogie Boogie, just like some comparisons to him possibly looking like a Klans person because he's in like a hood more, and then also the name Oogie Boogie that could be interpreted as a slur, and Tim didn't care.
He's made evident he doesn't really care about much in that regard, and also like seems pretty misogynistic, but But I think, again, also just, like, it's not a surprise when you see the characters that are made. Yeah. It's very much like I'm the misunderstood dude who's, like, quietly a genius, and people need to kind of, like, acknowledge how great I am. But he does have some really awful things that he said just about the fact that he doesn't have any diversity in his films with any people of color, really, and just, like, people come to bat for him on TikTok and other places saying, like, it's not a part of the aesthetic, as if, like, black goths don't exist. Or that's an exclusive to one culture. Like, that's not how that works. And also, a lot of his characters are dead. And anybody can be dead.
All people die. Okay? And they all will die. Everyone will. Sorry. Spoilers. But he does have this awful quote that I want people to know why we're separating the art from the artist here. He says, I remember back when I was a child watching the Brady Bunch, and they started to get all politically correct. Like, okay, let's have an Asian child and a black. I used to get, he says, a black, by the way.
Oh, God.
Not a black child. I used to get more offended by that than just, I grew up watching blaxploitation movies, right? And I said, that's great, but I didn't go like, okay, there should be more white people in these movies. First of all, Tim, blaxploitation movies are there to fill a hole in representation that they were not getting. So, of course, there's not white people in there. And there does not need to be more. That is never the problem. Like, that is, and if you are so upset at just them showing that the Asian kids live in the same neighborhood as the Brady Bunch, like, these are some problems, sir.
Yeah, it seems like there's some, like, real inherent racism at play. It's just like,
I love that that's the only example he could even come up with was blaxploitation films, because the rest of Hollywood was completely white, dude.
Yeah, like pick something else, right? He's like, okay, out of this one type of film that was also problematic, like, of the time, and cast those very specific people in not always the best light and made them all into tropes. That one I didn't complain about. I was like, yeah, of course. All of them.
I'll make you a deal. We won't put any white people in blaxploitation films. You don't put any black people in any Hollywood movies ever.
Yeah.
Done.
Yep.
Okay, great.
so that's
Done and
Perfectly
done.
equitable.
seems to be what he wanted, honestly.
Yeah, and he's super gross about it. And it's just, that's just not the case. And none of his films make any sense to, like, be valid in that argument that there wouldn't be people of color in those environments.
Yeah,
they do. They exist there, and even enjoyed them.
Yeah.
So
it sets a clear message too, because it's like this is a fantasy world like that he's creating. So like, are you saying, or like, it's like, there. Yeah. So it's just like, okay, so your fantasy is a world without any people of color. Like you don't want anyone in there. And it's like, yeah, that's clearly what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Cool. Noted.
You have people with snakes or spiders as hair and finger snakes. But you can't have a brown person.
Nope.
Like, sir? Like, what are you saying right now?
It's beyond aesthetic at that point.
You have a boy whose fingers are scissors. He's got scissor hands. That's fiction. That's make-believe.
Yeah. Show me a guy who has scissor hands.
This isn't real. Literally,
in real
this
life.
whole fucking,
They don't exist.
So, a whole time. And
it's also worth noting. I was just say it's also worth noting that those are issues that like the screenwriter Carolyn Thompson, like, this isn't just like the 2021 lens of a 1993 movie. Like, at the time when they were making it, like, Carolyn Thompson went to Tim Burton and to the director and was like, this is an issue, like, and we can fix it right here, right now. We can, like, make this work in a way that isn't offensive. Like, and this was specifically with the character of Oogie Boogie, but like at that point, and they were like, oh, you're being oversensitive. You're, you're just, and she said she's regretted it, ever since, like, to this day. So I think it's, there's things that, like, in hindsight, like, just, look back and people are like, well, I mean, not that this is an excuse, but it's like, oh, we didn't, at the time, that was just how Hollywood did it. We didn't, like, you have a situation with this film where they're, like, identifying the issue. They're on set. Your screenwriter who's written it for you is like, we need to rework this piece of it. After seeing the casting and seeing the context of that, because when she's writing it, she doesn't know who Oogie Boogie's going to be cast as. She doesn't know.
And then she's like, and you made it a black voice actor. Like, she's like, just like, now you're even like the one character you got, and you have voice dads, and it's this. Like, he could have been Jack. He would have been an amazing Jack. Like, that voice. Yeah. Like, that's Bone Daddy. Like, when those kids are like, how's it going,
He does
Bone
call
Daddy?
him Bone Daddy.
That would have been,
God.
like, Danny Elfman is not Bone Daddy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Ken Page is the name of Oogie Boogie. It's like, that's not
I mean, he's phenomenal. He's great. And it just, like, it's very...
And it's a great song.
Yeah, but it's that just makes me wish that he'd been Jack. What could have been?
Yeah, and when I was watching it, Mike had a funny line where he was just like, yeah, that integral part of Halloween that's about gambling. He's like, why is he a gambler? Like, why? Is this the character trait of this person that exists in Halloween Town? So some super problems, and definitely a film that's can be seen as cultural appropriation for sure. And, like, even his, like, if anything you can take from it is, like, his kind of acknowledging, like, oh, this isn't mine. Like, I can't do this justice. This isn't for me. And, like, acknowledges that, and then, like, respectfully steps away and, like, helps to put people back where they should be, and, like, should, like, appreciate it from afar, or appreciate it in this way that's, like, not, like, overshadowing or stealing the voice of the people who are there and understand that. And so, like, people can learn from that.
Yeah, I found a lot of articles about it that I'll put in our show notes. Just because, like, it's It's all people who like the movie too. They're like, this isn't a critique. It's actually does a fantastic job of showcasing what cultural appropriation is. If anything, it's like really ironic that considering the audience of this film is largely white, that like, and it's a lesson on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still such an over the head experience for so many. But there's a lot of articles on it, so I'll make sure to link some.
Yes.
They kind of like outline it deeply into like why.
Yeah. We do have the wrap because we're over, and this happens every time we have a guest because we get super excited. But for our listeners and viewers, Roland, where can they find you and all of the amazing content you create?
Yeah, let me look at my own website since I don't remember it here. I think it's, what is it? Fresh Show Films. What did we get here? I can't remember. Yeah, Fresh Show Films. Yeah, perfect. Yep, yeah, you can check that out. And yeah, we love making stuff. So if you're like an actor out there and a lot of our projects have started that way, where somebody's like, I need something for my reel and I'm really good, but like, can we just do a project? That's how we love to get started. Because again, it's all about this sort of low budget, indie, organic ways of project starting. So if you're an actor out there and instead of paying somebody $3,000 to make you a fake reel, you just want to make a movie, look us up. That's kind of something we love. So yeah.
That's why I feel like, Kat and I could probably have a reel now because of our films.
You so could. Yeah. Yeah.
Like everyone who's listening, definitely check out Jolly Butcher, which is our new one. But we also have Saw 9, Lock and Key, and Two Girls, One Ghost, which are all really absurd. And we take them all very seriously, even though they're absurd. So definitely check those out. And
that's why it's so fun.
The Fresh Show Films. Yeah, that's why you're just going to have a good time. Yeah, check out Fresh Show Films. Check out Chipmunk Economy, your band. Check out all the things.
If you want, yeah.
You can see Roland half naked in a shower. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but that's something you can do.
That's where I should have started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then people would know why we brought you on here. And I got sent a Facebook timeout for sharing your content. So
got everybody in trouble with that one. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one. But thank you so much, Roland. I'm glad that we finally
Thanks
got
for having me.
here.
This was a blast.
Yes.
This is so fun.
And picking out, and honestly, I'm so glad because we would have just talked about cultural appropriation, but the fact that you brought up that one thing, I was like, wait a second, there's so much I need to learn. And I feel like I'm smarter now. I'm like, I get it. I get things. This is crazy. So I appreciate you, is what I'm trying to say.
Appreciate you, both of you.
The number one best school.
Yes. So, Kat, don't get married.
Delete your kids.
Yeah.